Fine Line Fridays. We're back.
What's up?
How you doing, Chad?
Not as good as your background.
Well,
I'll
I
say
will
that.
say it
I'm
is.
just, I'm here with old school, man, and yours is sick. So,
We got to
well,
build. We got to start somewhere so we can build upon it.
we do. And you're raising the bar, right? Just like we're showing up and trying to raise the bar in the commercial roofing world. Now you're doing it to me on the background and the surroundings. So,
Yeah.
just wait till
Well,
next week.
we
Just
know
wait
what you're
till
doing.
next week.
We know what you're doing this weekend.
I know. It's going to be great.
Oh, that's awesome. So today's topic is really 500,000 per truck, and I can't wait to talk and get further into this and why 500,000. But just to preface the whole reasoning behind is to take things in bite-sized chunks, right? So many contractors want to grow through service because they see the value. There's so much value to it. Retainage, extraction, relationships, doing more work with less people. There's a lot of attraction to it, but 500,000 per truck, if you break that down and let's say you've got someone focused on hitting these numbers, that equates to 2,000 bucks 5 days a week. And that you can even break down further. Do you see it any different? And maybe elaborate on what your goals were as service profit.
So, 100% with you, right? Like $500,000 a lot of times can be mind blowing, especially if you're like, my truck only does 300, or I only do 300,000 in service, right? How do I get this one truck from 300 to 500,000? And much like you said, that's not the right question. It all breaks down to, right? My methodology is win the day to win the week, win the week to win the month, win the month to win the quarter. Because if you're tracking what's happening at each day, it makes it a lot easier, right? Because you play 5 separate games, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, like you said, 500,000. I think that's kind of a buzz number that goes around, but it's 500,000 a year. It's 125,000 a quarter. It's 41,000 and change a month, right? Or much like you said, it's literally 1923 a day, and it has been insanely beneficial. I'm trying to think of the right word, like beneficial and impactful and clarity, I think is really where it's at, to be able to say, and almost anybody should be able to answer this, where are your trucks at today? Right now, where are your trucks at? What's the schedule for today? And what are they billing today?
Yeah.
And like that's been the coolest part of like me coaching, right? Because I can say, okay, we got 2 leak calls, both of them have a $500 NTE. Well, it's $1,000. Right now we know our trucks aren't where they need to be. And that's been the
Yeah.
coolest part of implementing, this is breaking that down into bite-sized chunks.
For sure. And when you live in the day, and I like what you said, you kind of have 5 different games a week. When you live in the day, you take your two service job example. So my mindset would be, I got 2 jobs on the board, both $500 not to exceeds. I got to sell something. I got to communicate better with the crew. I got to see what they find when they get there. Maybe there's another section I can get on, right? So I need to convert that immediately into $2,000 tickets. Or maybe that one job turns to a big job, and so many different potential outcomes could come from that. But when you live in the day, the person or people focused on managing that day, the mindset changes. I often had to send crews really far away for not a lot of money. So it was like a really needed account. Call me when you get there. What do you see? Call the customer, right? Tell them the situation. Relay the actual facts to the customer. And a lot of good comes from that. But if you hit your strides, 2,000 bucks a day, and you don't do it every day. Some days, we would have good repair jobs where it was 3,500 bucks a day. The next day maybe we hit 1,200 bucks a day. But if the goal is $2,000 a day, then it seems to me a lot more manageable. And the service manager has the resources too to make it happen if they're more aware. Because if you start to put these goals into place, what do you got to do to see where you're at, right? And that's where you've spent a lot of time helping people see where they're at. What's that been like?
So it goes back. So I'm going to say it again: win the day to win the week to win the month. Right? Most contractors that I see inside our industry work on the monthly P&L that comes out of their accounting system. right? And there's so much more than that that's available to you. I'll say good contractors, not we're not getting to great yet, but good contractors schedule ahead, right? And they're scheduling almost a week ahead, which means they have the ability to forecast whether they're going to hit their goals. Like literally, they know today if they're going to hit their goals next week. And they know that from playing that game, right? Every day, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000. But like you said, Tuesday, you might have a $3,000 contract, right? Like, that's awesome. And Wednesday, you got two $500 tickets, which it means, right, a couple different things. And I'm just thinking out loud, right, as a service manager, putting myself in that seat. Well, number one, I'm not billing enough. I know that. But then number two, what opportunities do we have to provide more value? And that sometimes is a conversation I have with contractors where it's like, man, NTE increase or upsell, they hear sell and they think that you're making someone buy something they don't need.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into that? Like when you're talking to contractors or even employees, right? They're like, man, I don't want to make them buy more than what they told me they want to. You ever run into that?
Oh, absolutely. Let's break that open some more, because the term sell makes you feel like, well, I don't, there's a lot of people in service that don't really have that personality set of going out and actually making sales. It's not really about that. It's about, to me at least, helping. And the way that I would often put it to the service guys on the roof is, you're doing the client a favor. If you're fixing 1 out of 5 boots that all have the same defect, but the one's leaking, the one's the problem right now, let's let them be aware of the other 4. Because if we did it all now, we could do it for $1,000. But if we got to come back 5 times, right, that's $2,000-$3,000 over multiple headaches. So there's value in uncovering the facts and then just being able to bring that to the client. And then as a result is the sale that you're talking about.
Yep. And I say this in a lot of the sales stuff I do, the customer's perception is their reality, right? And most of the time, the customer is not calling you because there's a roof leak. They're calling you because there's a stained ceiling tile or whatever the situation is. At the end of the day, the customer, most of the time, doesn't care. They just want it to stop. Mm-hmm. So when we start thinking about a $500 NTE, so I'm going to break that down a little bit, right? Like that's an NTE, that's a not to exceed. And what that means is that the customer says, hey, go ahead and fix this, but if it gets to this dollar amount, let me know. That's a huge, huge mindset, right? That sometimes I have this conversation with contractors. An NTE does not mean stop, do not pass go, stop all work, get off the roof, go home, and we'll see if it leaks or not tomorrow. It's just a tolerance to be able to say, hey, don't bill me more than this unless I know.
Yeah, right. It's like a budget.
And yeah, exactly. So that to me is the first key to unlocking, right, that $2,000 a day. Because I did a little math that I wanted to share with you guys that, and I'm just going on averages, at $85 an hour, working 8 hours a day, okay, because we're not going to put overtime in that because that's going to hit our profitability. But $85 an hour at 8 hours a day, if they're billing for all 8 hours, is $680 or $1,360 a truck. Okay, so time and material doesn't get you to that $2,000. Now, typically, and I have this math broke out, so I'm doing it for you guys, here. But typically, materials are about 20% of an invoice. You agree with that, Will?
Yeah, or less.
Yeah, or less, right? Yeah, you get up on it's a puncture, and you're heat welding 1 square foot or 6 by 6 inch of TPO. It's not 20%, but at the end of the day, unless you're rolling out modified or putting in retrofit drains, 20% is my round. So even at an 80-20 split, you're still only at $1,600. So make sure not only that the owner and your service managers, but more importantly, your company understands that an NTE is just a tolerance to be able to say, don't go over this amount unless you tell me. And then that takes us into a whole different world, right, of like communicating with the customer, right, and getting to that point. So do you agree with that? Do you see it differently?
I absolutely see it the same way. And I like the verbiage around it, right? It's a tolerance, it's a budget. And you need to A lot of people do look at it that way. They got to get it solved for under the budget. But I often see, if you're given a $500 not to exceed, that the invoice is $500. It's like I wouldn't do that. I would kind of round down a little bit there.
Or
But
$4.99.
yeah, exactly. But you get out there and it's a curb that's failed, and you tempt the curb because that's all you can do for the $500, and then you quote the permanent repair for coming back. And I often found that was a way to teach clients how to trust you more and give you bigger budgets to begin with, so long as you're doing the right thing. But what you were commenting on that I think we should pick apart a little bit is the difference of fixed margins versus converting, because to your point, you have a locked or a fixed margin on time material rates. You pre-estimated to get to your labor rate to begin with, or it was just around and you kind of roll with it. And you can only make a fixed amount of profit. You can work as many hours in the day as you want, but you make a certain amount of profit. But if you were to go out there on a lead call, uncover something, and then add that to the ticket, your margin goes from, let's say, 50, 60, 70% to 200%. But it's a difficult feat to do if you don't have the communication aspects, which you started talking about communication. That's absolutely required to pull that kind of stuff off, and that I think people get intimidated by. Would you agree?
Yes, the word that is commonly used is bother. And I don't know why, I say I don't know why because I'm constantly trying to work with the individual. Just like, I don't want to bother my client. And there's a massive difference between bothering your client and then helping them solve the same problem that you're there to solve, right? Or making sure that same problem doesn't happen again. So I find that interesting, right? That certain individuals, whether it be sales or it seems like a lot more on the technician side, they feel that they're bothering the client.
Yeah, you got to change the mindset, because if you can get your people to see the why is I'm here to help. I want to help my client. Like you were pointing out earlier, they know that the ceiling tile is stained. That's all that they know. But
Yep.
You go out there, you address the issue, and you educate them along the way. Here's why it was leaking to begin with. That same problem is happening over here, or could happen over here. You're constantly educating your buyers, but certainly don't want to bother them. That's not the name of the game. And that's kind of tying to the sales aspect of it. Sales, I don't want to do that. How many times have you sent an invoice with a quote attached saying, hey, technician fixed your stuff. By the way, they suggested you take care of these future items. And what was your close rate on work that you did that way?
Better than any salesman trying to find a new client.
Yeah.
70%, right? It's insane. I remember one service division, they had 2 trucks, and it was $20,000 to $30,000 every single month that they were bringing in simply from finding additional work. And this was at least 4 months in a row when I was helping specifically with that division.
Wow.
It was insane, man. It was insane. And I wouldn't consider it selling. This was just finding additional items that are going to help the client keep the building dry. And they were real items, right? It was failing sealants, right? Which is one of the biggest things that put into preventative maintenance and roof leaks. It was missing fasteners. It was punctures around HVAC units. It's just looking a little bit further beyond what exactly I'm there for.
Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to start doing if you're not already doing that. But you're changing the mindset of the guys you send out. You're changing the mindset of the people sending the guys out. Everyone has to have some sort of mindset shift in, I got to look beyond this leak. Or how many times have you had to go out, to a repeat leak where you can't quite figure it out? And if we would have stepped further out, we would have found it. I had a Chick-fil-A I kept getting called out to. And I remember this specifically. We've been called out. And it's like, guys, why can't you find this thing? And I went out there, and I noticed on the side of the building there was a conduit line that was just wide open going right inside of the EFIS. I'm like, could that be the source of the leak? But that was a little extreme because that was beyond the roof walls and down the side of the building. But the mindset of, we got to keep working our way outward and not be so focused on the specific ceiling tile that's stained.
And what you just said right there is that bridge from good to great. Because when someone calls me, my customer, contractor, I don't care who it is, they're not an expert in the trade, right? They don't know if it's an HVAC unit, they don't know if it's a sprinkler head, they don't know what it is. And most of the time they're saying, hey, it's coming from above, it looks like the roof is leaking. And that's the bridge from good to great, is to be able to figure out or give your customer the correct action to fix it, even if it's not your trade, even if it's not your specialty, right? And you going above and beyond to the EFIS doesn't mean that you have to fix the EFIS, but at the end of the day, they called a roofer out there, a roofer didn't fix it, and then I'm going to assume that the roofer sent an invoice for their minimum charge, right? Even if it is shutting an HVAC door, it's going above and beyond that, right? And that's where value comes from. And that's when, when Will, you call back to that Chick-fil-A or whatever it is, and you say, hey, I found some additional stuff beyond this, right? Then they're like, you know what? I trust this guy, right? Why? Because he's helped me solve every one of these situations. And if he found something else above and beyond, that's where what I call a trusted advisor comes in. And it makes it a lot easier to be able to hit this $2,000 a day. Trust is a huge part of that, but I think you crossed that line there, right? When it's going, how do you go from good to great? It's getting to the point to where when water comes in or when your customer has a problem, you help them solve it.
Absolutely. And that type of relationship should be the target for every building we go out on. I want all my clients to be able to call me because they trust me and they know that I'm not going to stop at just solving the issue. I think when you go out, it's a little bit of echo. I don't know why. It was doing great. But when you go out, let's say you have the constant battle with the HVAC unit that's leaking. No, it's the HVAC unit. No, it's the roof. And there's a lot to be lost in that type of relationship, blaming other trades, going back and forth. You could be as certain as you want, but the client doesn't see it any different. Those type of situations occur, and how did you solve it that preserved the trust in the client?
So I've done two things. Number one, and I've already said it, the customer's perception is their reality. They don't know that you guys are backlogged in work. They don't know that you have 24 more work orders to get to in the next 2 days. They don't know any of those variables, and to be honest with you, they don't care about that. They care about their experience, right? So the better that you can make that experience is the more of a trusted advisor you're going to be with those customers. Now, when it comes to my technicians, I have different themes that I do each quarter. And those themes are there to be able to create a habit. And that's the whole key to this, especially with your field team, is creating a habit. And before I go down and talking about the theme that I implemented, what I'll tell you is that I would rather have a technician give me crappy bids every single time than not give me bids, right? Because I can make that small tweak to be able to say, hey man, we're not going to spud this whole thing back, or we're not going to put crickets all over this roof, right? Why don't you go look at the pitch pans? Why don't we look at this? I can redirect that. But the habit to have your technician looking above and beyond what he's doing, like that is key to me. Like that is gold. It's got to have that habit. Now, the theme that I implemented, I should say, is called Act As If. Okay?
Okay.
And it's act as if this is your building. Act as if this is your mom's building, your grandma's building. I don't care who it is, but act as if. If this was your building and the coping was flapping inside the air, would you get off the roof and go back in and just let it be? The question's no. Put it in the bid. Make a phone call. Let the customer make the choice, yes or no. But it's our job when we're up on that roof to be able to educate the customer on what you see. You're the eyes, hands, and ears out there, right? Customer can make the wrong choice and will make the wrong choice day in, day out, and we can't do anything about that. But we absolutely can educate them on what's coming on or going on up on the roof. So that act as if theme, right, when correctly implemented, that has changed cultures within businesses. So act as if might not be right? That might not fit, but that's what I would suggest. And themes have a whole process to implement, but things like that has made a massive, massive impact.
I like it because really that's at the end of the day what a lot of these contractors are trying to accomplish. They're trying to make change within a department that they see let's say, room for improvement, and it's going to require a change in mindset, a change in behaviors, a change in perhaps how we look at our day-to-day. And the whole 500K per truck lends itself well to that same philosophy, because if you live in the day and you're focused on what do I need to do today to hit the 2,000 bucks, and then back into the blocks that it takes to even contribute to that. If you have 4 lead calls on the board, awesome. I know I can easily hit my 2K. If you got 1 lead call on the board, what are we going to do? Or maybe you've got 2 scope jobs. I found that when I start talking to service managers and they start thinking in terms of those blocks, that the behaviors start to change automatically, because they're like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. You know, you mentioned this earlier on where we kind of reconcile last month, and there's really, yes, it tells you where you were last month, but there's nothing we can do about it. We can't change any of those job cost items, right? And if you live in the day, you're kind of getting ahead of it. You could forecast out. You were talking about that earlier as well. But you forecast out your day. Okay, what do I have on the board today? How can I maximize the resources, take that chunk, and then couple it with earning trust from your client base? And the contractors that I'm talking with that blend those two together seem to me like they're the most, I'd say, efficient out there.
Agreed 100%, right? Because you think about it, put all our minds together, and I would challenge you, if you have 4 tickets lined up for the day, can you, at $500 a piece, can you bill the 2,000 bucks? Yes, you can. However, if they're on time and material, you're only going to get there on time material, okay? And let's remember one thing. So you were talking about static profitability. Yes. However, your profitability on time and material can go down. As soon as your guys go into overtime, you are now billing time and a half, and most of the time, right? Or I'm sorry, you're paying time and a half. You're not billing time and a half. So think about that. If you're running time and material tickets and your guys are on overtime, you are now paying them 1.5 times, but you're not billing it typically.
Most of the time, right? I
So
totally agree.
in the scheduling side, right? So like I have specific scheduling processes that I do, but like Friday is a very like important day to me, because Friday's going to tell me, are my guys on overtime or are they not? Well, if they're on overtime, we're not running time and material jobs, because now my 55% GPM, right, on time and material now dropped to 30. Right? So there's a lot that goes into, you know, what I would call great service managers. But going back to just the basic side of this, I think it's exactly what you're saying, right? We got 2 tickets on the board. That's what we have for the day. Both of them have a $500 NTE, which means as a service manager, it makes it really, I won't say really easy, but it gives your service manager a very unique problem to solve for that day, which is, okay, Jim's heading out to his first job at 8 a.m. He's got a $500 NTE. I know that I need to help him get an increase there. Why? Because number one, my truck needs to bill $2,000, and it needs to bill $2,000 so me as a service manager can hit my revenue goals.
Right.
You know, I wrote this down as I was kind of making notes for this, right? And I'm like, all right, what type of service managers are there? And I came up with ultimately 3, and there's probably more, but there's one. The first one, which is probably the most common one, is the one that focuses on keeping people busy, right? He's worried about if his guys have 40 hours. And if his guys don't have 40 hours, he's bringing them into the shop. He's having them clean the shop. He's doing whatever he can to get 40 hours. And game on, I'm all for that. But then there's the second individual that's focused on revenue, which means when they come to the shop, there's no way that they're getting revenue, right? That's just all cost of the business. And that second persona focuses a lot on getting the most out of the tickets and providing the most value to the customers, which is finding additional work, communicating with them on site, right? Making those post-job proposals. So once you get done, that sales life cycle is not done. You now have a proactive proposal for that customer, right? And when I say proactive, I mean deficiencies, right, that we're fixing before they become a problem in the building, right? And then persona 3, it was kind of a joke, but it's like you have the persona 3 is like, they don't worry. And that's like the biggest worry ever, right? Which is like, no, everything's going great. We're fine. So think about that, guys. If you're thinking, okay, what kind of service manager do I have, or who do I have leading my service team? Do they worry about hours, or do they worry about revenue? Right? And if
Yeah.
they're not worrying about either one of those, that's even the scarier part, that they may not have goals that are correctly aligned, or I think it's correctly aligned, right? Correctly aligned to motivate them. Because even if they're worrying about hours, they're still worrying about their employees, right? Which is good. It's a good thing to have, but there's a lot in that transition.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think with the third persona, the third type of service manager, getting the most out of what we currently have. I see those lead calls on the board as arguably the best leads the business could get. So that it's not that it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop it. Just I'm going to build a ticket, close it out, and move on. It's I have 4 opportunities or 2 opportunities, however many leads you have, to go out and earn trust with a new client or existing client and get on more of their sections or put out more of the proposals that are lined up with helping. At the roofing company, Dustin didn't call the sales reps. He literally called them helpers. They were account managers, really. Their job was account manager. But that's their goal. You're going out there and you're helping your superintendent who's over a school district, or your facility managers, or whoever it is. You got to help them manage their chaos. They don't want to have leaks. They don't want to spend money, but they have to deal with these things. So if you're the one that shows up and helps them best manage that chaos, the result is you better hitting your $2,000 a day, and that's a scenario where everybody wins. I love those.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So,
So,
oh, go ahead.
question for you.
So,
Starting out, because I've been talking a lot recently with contractors that don't have a lot of service, but starting out, it seems to me like you have to sell your work. You have to sell your work to get started. But what's the threshold before, you have active leak calls coming into the business? Because that seems to me like it's the topping point when you're no longer just selling all the work, but you have people calling you to respond as well. Maybe can you speak to a little bit of that? Because I've seen a lot and I have my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours.
okay. Yes. So, when you first meet with a customer, there are 2 buckets that they will fall into, no matter what. You have the customers that basically say, nope, my roof is fine. I don't have any issues. I just replaced it 5 years ago, whatever it is, right? That basically tells me I will call you when my roof leaks, which means they're a reactive customer, which means they will do something when the roof leaks. Okay, that's the first bucket. The second one is I have a roofer, right? They come out, they do inspections, or whatever the situation is, right? And that possibly, if they're doing inspections and different things like that, if they do have a roofing budget that they deal with, and that's going a little bit deeper, they're going to fall in that proactive bucket. And ultimately, the tipping point inside there is, number one, in order for someone to work with you, number one, they have to trust you. That's a big part, right? And trust not only comes with you showing up to the office, it might be the website or social proof, right? They see your truck driving down the road, so having white trucks with no logos on it doesn't help with the social proof of who you are. So that's number one. Number two is every client you meet with, you should be putting them in one of those 2 buckets. Because when it rains and it leaks, every customer that told you, I'm fine, I don't have any problems, I don't have any goals with my building, are the individuals who are going to be calling roofers. So that's the low-hanging fruit number one, is that everybody you meet with will need a roofer. The question is when, right? Not if, but when.
Yeah.
So that's number one. On a hunting side, lay as many lines as you possibly can and put them in those buckets. Now, when you're talking about growth, right, that to me is really just advising that you have a service division, that you have the ability to be able to help. And then the other thing that I really, really dive into is every inspection that you have ever done that has emergency deficiency in it, that has not been awarded, is leaking when it rains. You should not have to pick the phone up. You should not have to call new people. You should not have to go by buildings and ask if they have leaks. Go back into the data that you have, because you know exactly every single roof that is leaking based upon the inspection reports that you have. That's the smart way to use data.
Well,
Now, did I answer that correctly, or were you a little twisted?
No, you did, and I can expand on it a little bit further too. But to your point, those emergency repairs, it doesn't mean that they actually see water coming into the building, but water is certainly getting into the roof system, and you need to catch that as soon as you can, because it's going to turn into a much bigger issue. Where I was going was
real quick. One pinhole. A roof's main system is to keep water out of the building. One pinhole. I don't care if it's a drip or it's a 12-foot open seam. That system is failing. The question is wind direction, how much rain, all those variables. So what you said is right. Any emergency deficiency is ultimately a failing system.
those are the easiest to sell.
Yep.
And again, we're using the word sell, but that's transact. Whatever you want to call it, help.
Yeah.
So that same example, you're helping them, you're helping the building, you're helping them prevent future issues. You're helping them spend less money, and as a result, you earn more, right? It's kind of funny how that happens. But the contractors that are starting out their service departments, they have to sell their work to start. And at some point, when you build up that client base, the phone will start to ring. And I think the older the company, the more that phone rings. And when it rains, your goal is to make it so that phone rings. And it's just, it's a different mindset starting out. It's a different mindset when you have one truck, or 0 going to 1 to 2 to 3, versus a mindset of someone that has 5+ trucks.
The one thing that I'll add to this, and this is not going to take us on a whole different tangent, because this would be like 7 different Fine Line Fridays, but your marketing and how you present yourself to your customer is massive. And I'll even call it the trigger, right? So the trigger is what ultimately makes someone take an action, right? And there are beautiful triggers that are on the side of trucks. Roofs leak, we fix them, right? Different things like that. 24-hour leak service, all kinds of different stuff that will trigger someone to be able to do that. But I challenge you guys to look at some of the stuff that you have, that if you want more leak calls, make sure that you're marketing as a service company, right? That'll help you get there, and the time that you send it, right? If there's a big rainstorm that goes through, you don't just want to send some big, long educational email. If you're looking for something, sometimes easier or shorter and easier is better. So there's a whole marketing avenue that you can go down, but market your literally talk about it, right? Don't be afraid to talk that you are a service company. We can help with this kind of different stuff, and make sure that whatever marketing material you go out there has a trigger or some type of call to action, so the person knows, or people, company, whatever it is, knows how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to build it up, but they don't know unless you tell them.
I've seen beautiful marketing material with no phone number on it, right?
Okay.
Beautiful marketing material. I'm being honest, right? Like, what's the phone number you call? What's the website you go to? Those types of different things, right? And make it unique, make it big. That'll help.
No question. Well, I love it. Well, once again, we're over. I don't know if at some point we turn these to 45 minutes. I'm cool with that, but I'm having fun. How about you?
I'm here. And yeah, just log off at 30 if you're done listening to us, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No. All right, so 500,000. I'm going to recap this. The reason $500,000 is there is because it's easy, it's simple, and the harder you make it for your employees is the harder it's going to be for them to be able to grasp it. 500,000 is 125,000 a quarter. Still too difficult, guys. It's $41,666 a month. Still too difficult. It's too hard to play the month game. Break that down based upon your work days. It's $1,923 rounded up. It's $2,000 a day that we need to bill, and that's the problem that you need to solve every day. Look at the work orders you have. Look at where your trucks are at. Are you at 2,000? If you're not, how are you going to get there? And that's the job that your service manager needs to figure out. That's how you take these big goals, this $500,000 a year. This is what each truck bills. Break it down, make it simple. And that's how you get to 500,000. That's how you get north of 500,000. You just start killing that $2,000 a day number.
Absolutely. I love it. This was a fun one.
Yeah.
We will hop back on in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
By then, you'll be set up, right?
Yeah. Oh, we'll be awesome by then. Don't worry, guys.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Will.
See you.